The click of a pen, the quiet hum of a server bank, the muffled ring of a phone being answered 40 floors below. These were the sounds of Julian Croft's empire. An empire built not on steel or oil, but on code and data, on predicting what someone wanted before they even knew it themselves. He was a master of information, a king in a castle of glass. And yet, standing just 3 feet from his desk was the one piece of data he never bothered to process. Her name, he vaguely recalled, was Anna. She was, for all intents and purposes, invisible, a ghost in a gray pantsuit whose only job was to exist in his periphery, anticipating his needs with an unnerving precision he'd long since taken for granted. He thought she was just another cog in his machine. He was about to find out she was the operator, and she was ready to pull the emergency brake on his entire life. It all starts with a pen, a very specific one, a custom-milled titanium fountain pen that was worth more than most people's cars. Julian is pacing his panoramic office, barking into his phone at some poor subordinate in another time zone. He gestures impatiently, a flick of the wrist, a silent demand. Before the gesture is even complete, Anna is there. She doesn't appear, she just is. She places the cool, heavy pen into his open palm without a word, her expression placid and unreadable. He doesn't look at her, doesn't acknowledge her. He snatches the pen and signs the document that a frantic-looking junior executive just thrust in front of him. A billion-dollar merger, on the verge of collapsing over a single misplaced clause, is saved. Julian ends the call with a triumphant smirk, tossing the pen on the desk. He turns to the junior exec. "Good work getting that sorted," he says, clapping the man on the back. Then, looking right past Anna as if she were a coat rack, he says to the room at large, "Can someone get me a coffee? Black." This was their whole dynamic in a nutshell. She was the silent architect of his success, and he was the man who couldn't even see her long enough to say thanks. For 2 years, Anna had been the silent, steady heartbeat beneath the noise of Julian Croft's life. Her official title was executive assistant, but her real job was something closer to a life support system. She managed a schedule so complex it would give an air traffic controller a migraine. She filtered his communications, knowing with terrifying accuracy what was vital and what was just noise. She remembered the birthdays of his estranged family, the allergies of his fleeting girlfriends, and the specific, often contradictory demands of his investors. Her desk was an island of perfect order in the controlled chaos of the executive wing. Every file labeled, every digital folder encrypted and organized. She was a phantom who made sure Julian's path through life was always smooth and clear of obstacles. More than once, she had worked through the night, a silent sentinel under the glow of her monitors, to defuse a crisis he would never even know existed. Like the time a rival firm tried a sophisticated hack on their servers. This wasn't the kind of brute force attack the company's expensive cybersecurity team was trained for. This was surgical, an attempt to steal the source code for Oracle, Croft's revolutionary new AI platform. While the company's alarms stayed silent, Anna noticed a single anomalous data packet, a digital whisper in a hurricane of information. It was a backdoor entry, hidden in what looked like a routine diagnostic request. For 6 straight hours, with her heart pounding a steady, controlled rhythm, she built a virtual labyrinth. She fed the hackers a corrupted, useless version of the code while tracing their origin. She walled off the real data, patched the vulnerability, and then, using a ghost protocol of her own design, wiped her own tracks from the system logs. The next morning, Julian breezed into the office complaining about traffic. He never knew the crown jewel of his empire had been minutes from being stolen, saved not by his $1 million security team, but the quiet woman he paid to fetch his lunch. Her competence was her camouflage. He treated her invisibility as a feature, not a bug. He'd hold entire conversations with other executives while she stood at his elbow taking notes. He'd even discuss her in the third person. "Ask Anna, she'll handle it," he'd say. "She's good at the details." He never used her name to her face. It was always a clipped, "Get me this," "Cancel that," or just an expectant silence she was meant to interpret. One Tuesday afternoon, Julian strode out of his office, glowing with the thrill of a fresh kill. He had just secured a preliminary agreement for his most ambitious project yet, a partnership with the notoriously reclusive and ruthless Voss brothers. They were German industrialists who specialized in, well, no one was quite sure. Their business was opaque, their money old and shadowed. This deal, a joint venture to build private, hyper-secure data havens across the globe, would make Julian not just a billionaire, but a true power broker, a man who controlled the world's most valuable commodity, secrets. "We're going to the Athal," he announced to the senior team gathered around him, like courtiers. The Athal wasn't just a resort, it was a fortress of luxury, a private island in the Maldives where the world's elite could meet far from prying eyes. The Voss brothers want to finalize the terms in a relaxed environment. We leave Thursday. Excitement rippled through the room. Julian's gaze swept across his team, then slid right over Anna. "You'll be needed, of course," he said, not to her, but to the air in front of her. "Handle the logistics. I want the entire senior delegation booked, secure comms on the island, and a full dossier on everyone attending. And I need a new pair of swim trunks. Blue. Not navy, not turquoise, just blue." He didn't wait for a response. He was already on his phone, leaving her to assemble the pieces of his grand adventure. Anna stood still for a moment. For the first time in 2 years, a flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. It wasn't anger or frustration. It was the quiet, chilling calm of a plan, years in the making, finally clicking into place. She adjusted the cuff of her simple blouse and turned back to her desk, the dossier on the Athal attendees. She wouldn't have to do much research. She already knew everyone who would be there. More importantly, they knew her, or rather they knew the person she was before she became the invisible Anna. A quiet smile touched her lips, so small that had anyone seen it, they would have dismissed it instantly. The king was walking into a trap, and his most trusted servant had just set the bait.
The Athal was less a resort and more a private nation of opulence. Villas floated on stilts over water so impossibly clear it looked like liquid sky. The air hummed with a respectful quiet, broken only by the gentle lapping of the ocean and the murmurs of staff trained to be even more invisible than Anna. Julian Croft was in his element. He moved through the resort like a man who believed he owned the place, holding court by the main infinity pool. With him were Heinrich and Klaus Voss. They were sharp, severe men with pale eyes and expensive, understated clothes that couldn't hide the predatory stillness in their posture. They were sizing up Julian, this brash young tech mogul who wanted to play in their league. Julian, ever the performer, was putting on a show. "The beauty of the system, Klaus," he was saying, swirling a glass of amber liquid, "is its complete autonomy. The data is secured in a quantum-encrypted network in locations only I know. It's the digital Fort Knox." "Security is only as strong as the people who have access," Heinrich said, his voice a low rumble. Julian laughed, waving a dismissive hand. "Access is limited, to me, and my most trusted people." As if on cue, he snapped his fingers without turning his head. "Anna, my sunglasses." Anna, who had been standing a respectful 10 feet away in her usual drab work clothes, moved forward and held out a pair of sleek, black sunglasses. Julian took them without a glance. He'd summoned her on purpose, using her as a prop for the Voss brothers. It was a power play, a way of saying, "See, even the smallest parts of my universe bend to my will." "My assistant," he said, a hint of theatrical boredom in his voice. "She handles things." Klaus Voss's eyes flickered toward Anna for a split second, the dismissive assessment of a man cataloging furniture. Anna's face remained a perfect mask of neutrality. She gave a tiny nod and retreated to the shadows of a palm tree. She could feel Julian's arrogance radiating off him like the tropical heat. He was so confident in the world he'd built, so sure of everyone's role. He had no idea he was standing on a stage she had meticulously set. Later that afternoon, the meetings broke. The Voss brothers retreated to their villa, and Julian, triumphant, decided to network by the pool. He shed his linen shirt, revealing a physique maintained by expensive trainers and boundless ego, and settled into a cabana to survey his temporary kingdom. This was the moment. Back in her own villa, Anna began her transformation. This wasn't some dramatic makeover montage. It was simpler, more profound. It was the shedding a skin. The gray pantsuit was hung neatly in the closet. The tight, severe bun was undone, letting a cascade of dark, wavy hair fall to her shoulders. She slipped into a one-piece swimsuit, a deep, elegant emerald green. Over it, she tied a simple white sarong. She looked in the mirror. The mousy, forgettable Anna was gone. In her place stood a woman of poise and power, a woman you couldn't possibly ignore. The change wasn't in the clothes, but in the way she held herself. It was a decision to finally become visible. When she walked out towards the pool, the atmosphere subtly shifted. A few heads turned, then a few more. People who had looked right through her an hour ago were now watching, confused and intrigued. She didn't walk like an assistant. She walked like she owned the island. She chose a lounge chair on the opposite side of the pool from Julian, but in his direct line of sight. She laid out her towel, took off her sarong, and settled in, opening a book. It was a deliberate, calm sequence of actions that drew every eye. Julian saw her. At first, he was just annoyed. Why was his assistant lounging by the pool? He started to get up, ready to march over and remind her of her place. But then he hesitated. He saw the way other people were looking at her. He saw the effortless grace that was a world away from the timid woman he thought he knew. A seed of confusion was planted. Then came the catalyst. A man, weathered and handsome with a familiar face from the cover of business magazines, walked past her chair, stopped, and then turned back, a slow smile of recognition spreading across his face. It was Marcus Thorne, the legendary CEO of a global media conglomerate. "Alana?" he said, his voice carrying across the water. "Alana Varma? My God, is that you? I thought you'd dropped off the face of the earth. Last I heard, you were embedded with rebels in South America." Anna, or rather Alana, looked up from her book, a warm, genuine smile gracing her lips, a smile Julian had never seen. "Marcus," she said, her voice smooth and clear, "I decided I needed a break from the jungle. The amenities here are slightly better." Thorne laughed. "I bet. What are you doing here? Please don't tell me you're investigating me." "Not this time," she replied playfully. "Just a working holiday. You could say I'm deep undercover." Across the pool, Julian sat frozen. Alana Varma. The name echoed in his mind, triggering a cascade of forgotten headlines. Alana Varma, the two-time Pulitzer Prize-winning investigative journalist, the woman who toppled a corrupt government with a single exposé, the journalist who went undercover for a year to expose a global trafficking ring, a legend famous for her chameleon-like ability to disappear into her roles. And she had been fetching his coffee for 2 years. His world tilted on its axis. The blood drained from his face. He looked at the woman by the pool, the woman everyone was now gravitating towards. He saw her laughing, shaking hands, being treated not as an assistant, but as an equal, as a titan. The Voss brothers, having returned to the pool deck, were watching the scene with quiet, calculating intensity. Klaus leaned over to Heinrich and murmured something in German. Julian's stomach clenched. He could feel the foundations of his deal, his entire empire beginning to crack. The invisible woman had just become the center of the universe, and in doing so had made him powerless. The king was naked, and the jester he never even knew he had was the one who had just pulled back the curtain.
The dread in Julian's gut blossomed into full-blown panic. His mind raced, reframing the last 2 years. Every menial task, every dismissive comment, every time he'd looked right through her, it all replayed in his mind, now cast in a horrifying new light. He hadn't just been arrogant, he'd been observed. He wasn't just a boss, he was a subject. He watched as a small crowd formed around her, laughing at something she said, their body language deferential. They were treating his assistant with more reverence than they treated him. Control, the one thing he valued above all else, was slipping through his fingers. He had to get it back. He pushed himself to his feet and strode around the pool, his walk now stiff and robotic. He felt 100 pairs of eyes on him, and for the first time in his life, he felt exposed. He stopped in front of her chair, casting a shadow over her. The circle of admirers fell silent. "Anna," he said, forcing a tight, condescending smile, "I think you're a little confused. Your place is in your villa, on call, not socializing." Alana looked up, removing her sunglasses slowly. Her eyes were clear and steady. There was no fear in them, only a calm, piercing intelligence that he now recognized with a sickening lurch. "My name," she said, her voice quiet but carrying immense weight, "is Alana Varma, and I believe my employment is about to be terminated." Marcus Thorne let out a low whistle. "Julian," he said, a note of warning in his voice, "you might want to tread carefully." "Oh, I'm beginning to understand," Julian snapped, his composure cracking. "So you're a journalist? Is this a joke? You thought working as my assistant would get you a book deal?" He was flailing, trying to shrink her back down into the box he'd built for her. Alana stood up, wrapping the sarong around her waist with a fluid grace. She was his height, and suddenly he felt incredibly small. "It's funny, Julian," she began, her tone conversational, yet every word was a perfectly sharpened blade. "For 2 years you treated me like I was invisible. You never once asked me where I was from or what my last name was. You just assumed I existed to serve you. That arrogance, that profound lack of curiosity, it's your fatal flaw. You see people as tools, not as humans. You assume everyone is playing your game." She took a step closer. He instinctively took a step back. "But I wasn't playing your game, Julian. I was playing my own." She paused, letting the silence hang in the hot air. "I'm the lead investigative journalist for the Global Herald. For the past 2 years, I haven't been your assistant. I've been your biographer. And you, Julian Croft, have just given me the story of a lifetime." The words hit him like a physical blow. He staggered, his face a mask of pure horror. "This deal," she continued, gesturing towards the Voss brothers, who were now watching with undisguised alarm, "this Oracle platform you're so proud of, it's not a fortress, it's a weapon. I have documents, Julian, encrypted emails you thought were deleted, recordings of conversations you thought were private. I know these secure data havens are a front. I know you plan to sell access to the world's most sensitive information to the highest bidder. I know the Voss brothers aren't investors. They're your first clients." The Voss brothers exchanged a dark look. Heinrich took a half step back, subtly distancing himself from Julian. His entire business was built on plausible deniability, and Alana Varma had just detonated a bomb in the middle of it. "I have proof," Alana said, her voice dropping to a near whisper, "that you illegally accessed a rival's medical records to force a hostile takeover last year. I have the transaction records for the shell corporations you used to bribe FCC officials. I know about the data breach at your last company, the one that ruined your co-founder, the one you orchestrated." Each revelation was another nail in the coffin of his career, his freedom. He was speechless, completely broken. The arrogant billionaire was gone, replaced by a pale, trembling man in swim trunks, exposed and humiliated. "You built an empire on secrets, Julian," Alana said, her final words delivered with chilling finality. "And you were so busy guarding them, you never wondered about the secrets of the quiet woman standing beside you every single day. You never thought to look. You never saw me." With that, she turned her back on him. She gave a small, apologetic nod to Marcus Thorne. "Sorry to have ruined the party." "Don't be," Thorne replied, a look of profound respect on his face. "This is the best story I've seen in a decade." Alana Varma walked away, her bare feet silent on the warm stone. She didn't need to look back. The image was already seared in the mind of everyone there. Julian Croft, the king of information, standing alone in the ruins of his kingdom, destroyed by the one person he never considered to be a source of itself. So, what do you think happens next? Does an empire like that truly crumble, or does a man like Julian find a way to slither out of the wreckage? The most satisfying stories are the ones where justice isn't just a single moment, but a lasting change. They remind us that no one is truly invisible, and that integrity is the only currency that really holds its value. If you were captivated by this story, be sure to subscribe for more tales of satisfying justice and dramatic turns of fate. Hit that like button if you enjoyed watching the tables turn, and let us know in the comments below, what piece of evidence do you think was the most damning for Julian? We read every single comment. And click that notification bell so you never miss another story where the underdog finally gets their day. In the world of the powerful, visibility is currency. Julian Croft spent his life hoarding it and wielding it like a weapon. He lived in the spotlight, while those he deemed unimportant were shoved into the shadows. But he made a critical mistake. He forgot that shadows are where secrets grow. He forgot that the most dangerous threats are the ones you refuse to see. Alana Varma didn't need a spotlight to be powerful. Her power was in her patience, her intellect, and her understanding of human nature. She knew that the greatest arrogance of men like Julian is their belief that they're the only ones with a plan. In the end, it wasn't a rival CEO or a government agency that brought him down. It was a quiet woman in a gray suit, a ghost in his own machine, who simply chose the perfect moment to remind him and the world that she was there all along.